Good afternoon. My name is Charmaine Williams, and this is my communication practicum project. I started on this project in July, and I finished up on it in August. So I just included two dates. This is for Miss Cryat's class, and it's a communications class for Rasmussen College. And then we're just going to get started. My objectives for this PowerPoint and project, we are going to discuss three elements of interpersonal communication: verbal and nonverbal, listening, as well as self perception, conflict, and perception. To me, listening is the most important of everything in this objective. So, Coco is a film that was put out in theaters last year. It's a basically a children's film, a Disney film, and it's basically teaching kids about what happens when people pass away in like a way that kids can understand it. And it's a very great movie. It's a very educational movie for kids because it doesn't tell them too much anything harsh, but it lets them know still kind of what happens. And it's not really a religious film at all, so depending on what you believe, it still revolves around the whole subject of pretty much what happens to people, and to remember all of the people that you used to have in your life, including family, friends, or anything, and how to remember them and what the importance is of remembering your people when they do pass away. The setting for Coco is basically in Mexico in a town called Santa Cecilia. Cecilia. Sorry, I still don't know how to pronounce it. But basically, it's this young boy. His name is Miguel, and his family does not like music. He tells a story in the beginning about a lady who was in love, has a whole family, and her husband went to go pursue his music career, and he did not come back, unfortunately. But it doesn't really tell why of his disappearance, and pretty much the woman just goes on with her life, and she bans music from her life because of the past situation that happened. And Miguel idolizes this singer called Ernesto de la Cruz. He's a very famous singer, but he did pass away, so Miguel has never met him. And later on, he basically finds himself in a new dimension, and it's basically like crossing over to the land of the dead, but it's explaining what it is like to cross over and kind of the meaning of crossing over. And he meets this guy. His name is Hector. He doesn't know this man at all, and he thinks he's just a complete stranger. But Hector has an objective of the movie to pretty much have his daughter remember him because she doesn't remember him. And when she doesn't remember him after his passing, he basically fades away and he will never get to cross over, pretty much. So Miguel finds himself in this new dimension, and he pretty much sees all his passing away relatives who have passed away, obviously. But the background of the movie Coco itself and the title itself, Coco is Miguel's great grandmother. She has Alzheimer's disease. So she doesn't remember anything. She doesn't talk at all. She only talks a little bit every now and then, but she doesn't remember anything, so she doesn't talk. But Miguel still treats her as if she's pretty much a regular person, like she does remember things. He doesn't really let it phase him. He still treats her as if she's still there. Because she technically is. But she just doesn't remember anything because of her disease. So Miguel really wants to know in depth about his family and why they choose really to hate this music. But he believes that Ernesto de la Cruz is Coco's father, which would be his great grandfather, pretty much. And he's on a mission to figure this out. So basically, Hector needs help to get his picture put back up. in the land of the living so his granddaughter could remember him, or he would disappear and not be able to cross over. Moving on from here. I feel like I just talked a lot in this slide. Oops. All right, the main characters of this film is Miguel. He's pretty much the main focus in this movie. He's in the middle of this picture I put on the right of the screen. Hector is to the left of Miguel. He's like a skeleton, pretty much. Mama Coco is the one kind of to the right below Miguel. And that's pretty much Hector's daughter from way back when. Abuelita is Miguel's grandmother. Ernesto de la Cruz is the famous singer that I talked about previously. And there's other characters like Miguel's family, but I'm really not focusing on them per se, but the people that I revolved this project around, but they are included in this as well, and they do take some type of part, his family overall. Moving on. The three elements that I discussed, Miguel will be considered a sender because he's the originator of the movie. He is the height of all height. Everything is surrounding Miguel, and he is basically the adventurous character in this movie. He is willing to help Hector be remembered and get his picture put up in the land of the living because Miguel is the only person that can put his picture up in the land of the living because Miguel originates from the land of the living. So he would be the sender. The channel of communication will be the picture of Hector because this is the main source for his granddaughter to remember him, or he would not be able to cross over. Like when people pass away, we have like an obituary to remember them, and we have pictures, to remember people. And like when we're children, I know when I was a child, I don't remember half the people that I've ever met when I was a baby, but the people I have met, they'll be like, oh, I have pictures with you, and I remember you were this small, and this is that. But you'll never really believe those people until you see proof. And I feel like a physical photo is physical evidence of that person, and you kind of, get some little remembrance behind them. But I know when people I love pass away, I would love to keep a photo to remember those memories. Because honestly, if you don't have that visualization, I feel like you can't really keep up with a memory of a person. They just fade away. Feedback will be when Mama Coco, who turns out to be Hector's daughter, but Miguel doesn't know this yet, who turns out to be Miguel's daughter, Miguel would see Mama Coco and go back to her and sing this song called Remembering Me. And that's a song that Hector used to sing to her when she was little all the time before he, made his disappearance. And when Miguel goes back to Mama Coco and learns what he learns about his family and his background and Mama Coco, he goes sing to her the song. And then she later remembers that her father sang that to her, and she says it. And that was pretty much Hector's objective and his goal. So, moving on. Verbal communication. Verbal communication is basically any word spoken, written down, or a signature of some sort. Anything we speak to people around us, any spoken words, any conversation we have, verbally or written, like text messages, is verbal communication. Texting is the biggest verbal communication we have. We do also have social media, which is a verbal communication also. It's how we keep up with everyone across the world through text. So this is pretty much a way of verbal communication we use today. Way back when I wasn't born, and probably my instructor wasn't born, everyone used to write letters to everyone. But now you can just send a text, easy as possible. I cited our book on this page, as well as the website I found on verbal and nonverbal communication. The author was Lucas. Amy Lucas, so I cited her on this. It's a lot of good information I found about verbal and nonverbal communication. Uh, Verbal communication can inform others of a lot of needs we have, like per se, like your mother texts you, like I need something from the store. Your instructor texts you any due date. It pretty much our needs and our tasks and our future events. Like now we have event reminders on our phone to remind us about things and events that will take place. Verbal communication and Coco. Verbal communication is a part of also remembering because certain things, certain words, and phrases could spark a memory of ours that we didn't remember before. Because I know sometimes I am a very forgetful person, but sometimes I have like a deja vu moment that I would say, and like a word or a phrase will remind me about something, or I remember something that happened in the past. In the film, basically Hector finds out, well, Miguel finds out that Ernesto de la Cruz and Hector were best friends beforehand. And they were very close friends, but they don't know, and Hector doesn't know technically how he died. But then when Ernesto de la Cruz says this quote, I will move heaven and earth for my amigo, Hector then remembers a little bit about his passing. So I'm just going to play this clip. All right, enough of that. So basically, in the clip I just showed you, when that quote is mentioned, Hector then starts remembering more of his death. And then he puts two and two together that his best friend, Ernesto de la Cruz, poisoned him in order to steal his music and pursuing his fame alone, which is very selfish. But that quote was the significance of reminding him of his death and what actually happened to him. Because when he actually died, you don't really remember how you go until something like that sparks. I don't know what happens when we personally die because I've never been there before. But everybody has an idea and types of conspiracies about what happens when we pass away. But in this film, you don't know until something like that happens. Moving on. Nonverbal communications. These are basically expressions, facial expressions, the way we say things to people. If we like somebody, have a crush on someone, like there's a phrase called twinkle in the eye, love at first sight. And basically, it's more physical than verbally or anything. Like when you're communicating with somebody, you should make eye contact with them to let them know that you're serious. I cited our book, and I also cited that other website, Lucas, that I was just talking about, by Amy Lucas. His website's not Amy Lucas. Uh, but yeah, you get my point, I think. Moving on. And I kind of, just to backtrack, kind of just put like a little emoji face, heart eyes, twinkle in the eye. In the top right, it was like a heart eye as well. Just a little picture or two. Nonverbal communication in Coco. So there's pretty much a goal for Hector's picture to be put up for his daughter to remember him, so he can properly cross over. But there's so many things going on to the point that Miguel and Hector lose hope, because Miguel finds out his idol, Ernesto de la Cruz, the reason he wants to do music, the reason why he loves music so much and would do anything for music, is pretty much the enemy. And he poisoned Hector. And he finds out that Hector is really the one who is Coco's father, not Ernesto de la Cruz. So he's pretty much hurt at this point, and he's very sad, and you could hear it in his voice. And he just drops pretty much everything, all the because he's a pretty happy character, all the happy emotions he has, he pretty much loses all of that when it happens. Losing your motivation pretty much is very a saddening experience. You're not like happy and excited when you lose motivation and you don't complete something that you've been striving to do for the longest. Like, some people, if they feel like they fail at something that they were really passionate about, they get upset and it'll show. They'll either go through depression, completely seclude themselves from everyone. These are all examples of non-verbal communication. And I just put a little clip of part of the scene of when these things in the aftermath happen. All right, that's just a little clip of some nonverbal communication. So yeah, they lose hope at this point a little bit. Everything's kind of just going downhill and not how they want it to go. And Miguel is eventually turning into skeleton as well. So the longer he stays in the land of the dead, he will become one of them pretty much, and he will pretty much be forgotten, and he will be gone. Too far. All right, listening. This is the root of nonverbal communication. I mean, this is the root of communication, listening. If we don't listen to others, we pretty much. Sorry, somebody just walked in here. All right, if we don't listen to others, there's no point of communication if you don't listen. When you're listening, you should provide your full attention. It's providing your full attention to a sound or people talking or even like music. We all listen to music, I'm sure. When you go to the movies, they have surround sound while you watch the movie, or it'll be pointless to watch a movie. But we do have subtitles, but a lot of people don't like to use subtitles. Listening is receiving a message being spoken out of someone's mouth or a message in a video we're watching. It is the core to communication, as well as responding to the person you're listening to, which would be the sender. You're supposed to pay attention to every word and identify the message, observe their feelings, reword just to fully understand what the speaker is implying. And you have to focus on the verbal and nonverbal communication messages. So focus on their body language, focus on their emotion, and focus on tone of their voice, as well as the message that is being spoken. I cited a couple websites on here, a couple articles from the same pretty much website. I got the verbal and nonverbal communication, but from different pretty much authors. Sorry, somebody's behind me. And I also cited our Rasmussen lesson content. Listening and Coco. So like I said, Miguel's family does not like the idea of music because of their past and what has happened in the past with the great great grandmother being left by the musician that she was married to, and she did not expect that from him. So she was very upset about it. So she just took it upon herself to banish all music from her life. Miguel is in love with music, and he tries to explain to his family that music isn't harmful and it's actually a beautiful thing. His grandmother, Abuelita, who is Coco's daughter, she definitely does not tolerate music from Miguel. So every time Miguel talks about it, she always interrupts him, cuts him off, and he cannot even get a word out about his opinion when it comes to music. So she always cuts him off and everything due to her negative views on music because of the past that has happened to her mother. But Miguel is still figuring out a lot of things about his family. I cited the lesson content from our module as well on here. I just keep clicking too far. Sorry. All right. Self-perception. All right. This is how we perceive ourselves, how we look at ourselves, our self-image. A lot of people take pride in their self-perception because the self-perception also controls how others view you. A lot of people have their own opinions about people, but most of all, like celebrities, they perceive themselves to be a certain way. Celebrities are cool. Some actors are cool as well. They're all famous. They have money. Most of them are beautiful, very beautiful. A lot of people change their bodies just to have that perfect image for other people. But we don't really know those people besides what they perceive to be. And pretty much cited our lesson content and Miriam Thesaurus for this lesson also. But yeah, self-perception is how we perceive ourselves and how we give off the meaning of our own behavior. It defines you. It's the definition of you and how others may view you. In this movie, Ernesto is a famous singer. He's a legend. He is always remembered because of his legendary stature in the movie. He is very wealthy. Well, he was very wealthy before he passed. He was very wealthy. He has the most talent out of everyone. He is literally the top notch of this movie and of Mexico. Everybody knows Ernesto de la Cruz. Everybody knows him. Everybody thinks he's suave. He is best dressed, has a beautiful voice, writes great music. They think he has a natural talent. But that's how he perceives himself, but really he is really not a good person in this movie. And I put a quote to the left here. It says, "And Hector was my best friend. Success doesn't come for free, Miguel. You have to be willing to do what it takes to seize your moment. I know you understand." And that's a quote from him. And that's what he said to Miguel after Miguel found out that he pretty much poisoned Hector and stole all his music to pursue his own success because he wanted to be successful and he was willing to do anything to make that happen. Does he really seem like a good person? Not really. He seems like a very selfish person who would basically murder someone just so he can come on top because they want to go back to their family, but he doesn't have the natural talent. He doesn't have the songwriting ability. So he took that turn to make that happen for him, which successfully did, but everyone's going to figure out that he's not so nice. I also cited, I just looked up a lot of more things about Ernesto on the Disney website about it's Disney Wikipedia about Ernesto, a lot of the characters just to fully explain. I know I've watched the movie like a million times, but you still can never have too much information. I also cited our lesson content from our module. And here's a little clip of when everything takes a turn and people find out who he really is. You're not going anywhere. Imelda, stay back. Stay back. All of you, stay back. Not one. Stop. Leave the boy alone. I want to harm destroy everything. The child is a threat. You think you can go back to the land of the living with Profoto to keep your memory alive? No. You're a coward. Who's the greatest musician of all time? Hector's the real musician. You're just the guy who murdered him and stole his song. I am the one who's willing to do what it takes to seize my moment. All right. So he's pretty much a nasty person, as you can see, and he's not who everyone thinks he is, but that was put on display for everyone to see. So the truth comes out eventually. All right, conflict. Conflict. All right, conflict is pretty much a reminder where our relationships stand. When conflict happens, it can either fail a relationship or it can make a relationship stronger. People think conflict is best to avoid, but it's not. You should always solve conflict right away and come to a solution right away because that will save a lot of relationships. But if both people are not dedicated to solving a conflict, then there will be no solution and the relationship will fail and the conflict will still keep on going. It's just like a domino effect. And if both people don't have that dedication, then everything's just going to fail. Avoiding conflict is not something that we should do because if we avoid conflict, it's just going to keep on cycling and cycling and cycling. Stages of conflict resolution, you should define the conflict. Notice what the problem is, state what the problem is, what the issue is mutually. Examine, basically trying to find the real source of the conflict and trying to understand why the conflict is happening and why it's ongoing. Next is test. So basically look for resolutions and just basically other alternatives. It may be a couple alternatives for a compromisation, compromising. I don't even know why I said compromisation. Compromising about what could happen for this conflict to be resolved. And both of the people have option to accept that solution or reject that solution. But those are up to both of the people. Some people may not feel the same way about most conflicts, and some people may not have the same feeling. All right. So, conflict and Coco. Coco's mother, Imelda, she vanished away music from her life because her husband left her. When her husband did disappear, she didn't really know why he disappeared. And he was just gone. She didn't have any desire to go look for him or to see what happened. So their relationship failed. And then her husband got murdered. So I feel as though she didn't have desire to go look for him. She didn't have desire to go see of any way she can keep her family together. She just kind of moved on from her life instead of going after what the real problem was. And the problem wasn't really Hector. It was mostly Ernesto in Hector's head about being famous and getting to that point of success. And she didn't know all that because she didn't communicate with Hector as she should have. And she didn't go after him. And probably if she would have went after him, he probably wouldn't have passed away. They probably could have resolved a lot of things in their relationship and did compromise in a way that Hector would still be alive and fulfill his purpose in the family's life and in her life, and as well have a successful career. But she just chose to move on and just hate music for the rest of her life. That was her solution. But obviously, that wasn't a good solution because now she has so much hate for Hector, and nothing was resolved between them two, and he passed away. Perception. This is receiving information through our senses. We perceive our surroundings. We go outside. It's very muggy outside, so we perceive it's going to rain. Um, basically our like when we go to a bad part of a neighborhood, you see like a lot of buildings tore apart, a lot of things you wouldn't see in a very nice neighborhood, a lot of pretty much houses you wouldn't see, a lot of types of people you wouldn't see. So we pay attention to our surroundings to perceive what type of area, what type of place we are in. Like when people go to like Cancun, Mexico, they perceive it's a paradise. So they perceive it's a good environment and it's a tropical environment, it's relaxing. So basically just being aware of our surroundings. I started our lesson context as well as Theosaurus Miriam as well. In Coco, the land of the dead, it's basically the idea of crossing over. It's where all of the pretty much people who die go. Miguel enters the land of the dead, and it's something he's never really seen before, of course. It's very colorful, has a lot of bright lights, and has marigold petals on the bridges to crossing over. Miguel, when he gets there, he's still in his normal human form, so he's not like the others. He sees that everyone's pretty much living skeleton and they have bones, but they're still like people, of course, with personalities. Miguel then figures out this is the afterlife because of his surroundings, and he's different from everyone surrounding him as well. But the longer Miguel stays in this dimension, he will become one of those people. He will become a spirit as well. So he eventually has to fulfill his purpose and get right back home. But he's very determined in this movie. He's a very courageous kid. I cited the Disney Wikipedia as well as our lesson content on this slide. Here's a little clip of the Land of the Dead. All right, let's move on from here. All right. My evaluation when it comes to communication and throughout this class, I've been going through a lot of life changing things, especially with my mother. I'm not close with my parents, both of them. I'm very different and cut from a different cloth of my parents. My parents have a lot of demons that they need to deal with themselves. My mother is not a good communicator, and I've never been able to communicate her about my feelings. And I'm a very big emotional person. I express my emotions in any type of way. But I've been going through a lot of pretty much complicated obstacles, and it has shown throughout this semester or term as well. But pretty much I had to distance myself, and I have to go through all these other obstacles in order to keep my sanity and keep myself afloat. Communication starts with you. If you can't properly communicate with other people and pretend like you don't have feelings or pretend like you're too good to communicate with people, you will basically be wasting your time, and you can't communicate with others, and they'll never be able to communicate with you because you're so closed off, and nobody wants to communicate with somebody who basically doesn't have that foundation of communication, and it's basically like talking to a brick wall, and nobody wants to do that. When talking to others, you should understand both sides of the situation. That's another thing, like compromising and just basically coming to a conclusion about both sides and understanding both feelings, especially the other person's feelings, because you're listening to them. So if each person listens to the other person, I feel like more so everyone can come to a common ground about things. Don't be selfish. Don't just listen to, don't just think about how you feel. Think about how the other person feels as well. When you pretty much do that, you can become more open, be more warming to the person who's the sender and who's talking to you about how they feel and communicating with you. When you're more welcoming in a conversation, I feel like there could be a proper solution to the conversation, and you will really be able to listen to the message of the other person's conversation and the reason why they're having this conversation with you. You have to step out of your comfort zone. If you're the type of person who just doesn't talk about anything, nothing's ever going to be resolved in your life when it comes to communication. I know a lot of people who don't like to express their feelings, and that's why they're still in the predicaments that they are in. I've learned what communication was um, throughout my life, and I'm still learning a couple things. I had to learn how to communicate properly with others about my feelings and about everything, because my mother is an alcoholic and she never knew how to communicate with me and still doesn't to this day. It's pretty much her way or the highway. And that type of energy rubbed off of me and started rubbing off on people around me. And I had to pretty much give myself a reality check. And I had to learn how to communicate better with others, better than she does. And pretty much it matured a lot of my relationships with people, the proper people in my life. Once I started changing my normality with my relationships, the right people came, and everybody's pretty solid, and everything's not perfect, but I'm a little bit more happier than I used to be. I'm pretty much by myself, so the people around me, now that I made that change, even though I'm going through a lot of things, they pretty much put me in this spot to be who I am. And they taught me as well how to communicate with people. So it has something to do with the people surrounding you as well. So if you surround yourself with bad people, you're gonna have bad communication. um, if I see a person that's not interested in my conversation, I know they don't care about my purpose of having that conversation or the relationship we have between each other. That's why me and my mother don't see eye to eye, and this is why I pretty much feel like we will never see eye to eye. But you can't force anyone else to be in that spot with you. And throughout this term, I've been coming to realization with that. The more I stay connected with the right relationships, I have fully developed a proper way to communicate with everyone. you have to become a natural communicator with everyone around you. Anger is never the answer. My mother is a very angry person, so I started rubbing off my anger to other people, and I've never been an angry person, but when you do that to people, they resent you and they don't want to talk to you and they don't want to communicate with you and they don't want to communicate what's wrong about anything. You will never come to a common ground about these situations going on in your life. That's how me and my mother's relationship took a turn. Well, it's one of the things that made it take a turn, but I'm not gonna put too much of my personal business there. It helped me understand she may not care about our relationship per se, still love her to death, but she may not care too much. She may not see both sides. She only sees her side because her poor communication between others, not with just me, just with everyone. We can't force anyone to properly communicate with us, and we can't force anyone to listen to us. We can only control how we communicate with others and how we treat others and how we give off energy to others. And that's the only way we can pretty much go about this communication life. Communicating is how us humans go on throughout life. Communication is the foundation to relation. Communication is foundation to your schooling. Communication is the foundation to everything. If we don't communicate, nothing in life pretty much goes around. All right, I just included my citations. Obviously, I cited the book, Making Connections, Understanding Interpersonal Communications. I cited the verbal and nonverbal communication site. I cited the Disney Wikipedia, as well as a lot of our lesson content on Blackboard. Blackboard was my go-to of this PowerPoint. As well as the book, but Blackboard helped me more because it's more nitty gritty, and it gets down to the core of everything. Thanks to our instructor. Oh, I guess that's the end of our slide.